Everyone, and apologize for the delay we're starting with. My name is Federico Brocchieri. I'm the UNFCCC contact point for Italian Climate Network and Italian NGO working on climate change issues. And let me welcome our guests, excellencies, delegates, and participants to our side event, which has been organized with our friends and partners of the Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition. We are extremely glad to be discussing today about the role of intergenerational equity, a very important principle that last year was included in the preamble of the Paris Agreement, and about youth empowerment. How can we actually empower young people throughout the world, and how can we concretely promote the participation of young people to the decision-making processes worldwide? So let me say that this is really trusting and hoping it's going to be an occasion for all of us to share ideas and to consider potential concrete means to actually operationalize these principles, which, as you know, have already been discussed for a long time. On intergenerational equity, for instance, the principle was, as I said, placed into the Paris Agreement last year, and now we need the phase 2. So we need to implement the principle. Now that it is in the preamble, we have some sort of legal basis to build on ad hoc decisions in this regard. And the same is with youth empowerment. It's a topic that has been discussed for a long time, but we need to see how we can concretely promote the principle in this negotiations process. So I will briefly go through the program of today, who will see an intervention from the Minister of the Environment and the Protection of Land and Sea, His Excellency Gianluca Galletti, from the Italian Minister of the Environment. His Excellency Jumeau, Seychelles Ambassador for Climate Change and Small Island Developing State Issues. And Agrippina Jenkins, Advisor, the Minister of the Environment from Costa Rica. So we have a high-level panel for our first session, and we would like to ask parties what are their views on how we can actually operationalize these principles. How can we really promote youth empowerment and youth participation worldwide? So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador Jumeau for the first intervention, and then we will give the floor to our guest from the Ministry of the Environment of Costa Rica, Ms. Jenkins, and we will be joined in a few minutes by the Italian Minister of the Environment, His Excellency Gianluca Galletti. So, ambassadors, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Just a clarification. You want me to address both questions one after the other, or we do one and then we do the other?
Both together.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. This is the 4th youth event that I've talked at over the past 2 weeks. And one of the reasons is because Seychelles believes firmly in engaging its youth and consulting with its youth in such processes, not just climate change, sustainable development. There's the CBD COP coming. And one of the things we are working to improve, we're already doing it, is to include, especially when it comes to intergenerational equity in negotiations, is to include the youth as part of the national delegation. For example, everybody knows this is the magic color badge that everybody wants to get into all the rooms. That's important. Over here, we have one of the youth members on our delegation. Raise your hands, Dominique. She has the same color badge as I have. And I do not see her as part of the youth delegation. She is part of the Seychelles delegation. She happens to specialize in youth affairs. Just as you may have a lady on our delegation who may happen to specialize in gender, and when they are not covering their specific activities, let's say in her case, youth, they are expected to cover other activities on behalf of the Seychelles delegation. The result is it's not an us versus them conversation. It's a constant conversation between the leaders of the delegation and the younger members, not the youth. So we make the differentiation when they do youth activities. So this is one way of making sure that their voices are always being heard. Over lunch, over coffee, they will talk about, oh, I was at this youth event and they said this, and they're talking to someone like me. And I would say, right, that would be a good position for Seychelles, not the Seychelles youth, for Seychelles to take. This is one way of doing it, is putting the youth on your delegation and having an agreement with them. Before you leave the country, we all sit together. We say who's representing, maybe the farmers, maybe it's the fishers, and this is your, can you share your program with me? For example, that members, senior members of the delegation can attend youth events. So if I'm looking at my particular agenda for today, and it depends when they have a youth event and there's a Seychelles delegation member at the event, if I don't have anything that I'm doing, I attend the youth event as just to show support and to show that how we value them. When it comes to promoting youth empowerment and youth participation in decision-making processes, actually, that is the reason why I said what I said about intergenerational equity. In Seychelles, for example, the youth groups are regularly consulted, even by ministers, as we formulate policy. I'll give you two examples. Seychelles is now preparing what is called its blue economy approach to sustainable development. And the minister who's responsible for blue economy not only consulted with fisher folk and people in the shipping industry, had a special meeting, not with a representative of the youth, but with actually a group of youth activists to say, these are our plans for the blue economy. Obviously, one of the things the blue economy can do is create jobs for young people in future, create training, capacity building opportunities, science opportunities. Where do you see yourselves in this plan? And when you tell me you see yourself there, you tell me what you think we need, and we'll have a discussion so that before the plan goes to the cabinet, you have incorporated whatever you can out of the youth. Meet with the university. There are so many students who are going to come out of the university. If we want to get them to do marine biology or whatever, ocean sciences, what do we need to put in the plan? And I'll give you my second example, so as not to take up the floor most. In Seychelles, as ever, a country where the economy is based on marine-based tourism and fisheries. That means it is an economy based on how we treat and look after the environment. Seychelles was planning to ban plastics. A youth action group took up the issue, ran a campaign on Facebook, and 3 weeks ago, I think, Seychelles banned the use of plastic bags, plastic cutlery, plates and cups, styrofoam takeaway boxes, and we banned it ahead of schedule because the youth, it wasn't more seeing it as youth pressure, in that the youth got the population talking about it. There's a difference between youth pressure and the youth engaging the rest of the population, their parents, their schoolmates, their school teachers. So as a result, we banned it ahead of time. And we are amongst the first SIDS and amongst the first countries to actually have a ban on plastics. That's youth power for you. Thank you. Sorry, there's something I must say, which is something that happened yesterday, I think. The UNFCCC, please make sure you give YOUNGO its voice. Do not allow people to talk on and on and on in sessions, and then when it comes to the CSOs, you say, I'm sorry, I don't have time for you to speak, the gender to speak or the youth to speak. They are not an afterthought. They are part of the process. And one of my beliefs is, I once did that in a session I chaired at the UN, is every 2 or 3 party speakers, I'd bring in a group. Then go back to the party speakers and bring in a group, whether it was the youth or the farmers, it doesn't matter. So we made sure that by the end of the day, some of the groups had a chance to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And let me say, I really appreciated your point when you explained how young people should be included in official national delegations. which is actually a position that my organization has supported in the last years, because we really think that young people should have at least a voice at the tables where their future is being decided upon. And I think our friends from Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition also agree very much on this. So thank you very much for your kind intervention. I will now give the floor to Ms. Agrippina Jenkins, again, advisor at the Ministry of the Environment of Costa Rica, for another intervention on how we can implement intergenerational equity and promote youth participation worldwide. Thank you, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to apologize for my minister and my director of climate change due to negotiations actually right now they cannot attend. So you got me. In this case, Ambassador, you took one of our points actually. As you can see, part of the youth, I still consider part of the youth. Our delegation is really small, but at least half of our delegation that goes to negotiate is under 30 years old, or 32, let's give a break, which is a really, really young delegations for what we can see. And as a brief point, it's interesting how sometimes other delegates think that because you're young, you will not speak, you will be afraid. And that's not our case. So it's interesting for us, even though we have a coordination meetings, as you mentioned also, before we came to Marrakesh or even to COP21 in Paris, where the coordination is made with us. It's not like you provide orders to youth, you're going to speak this and that, and that's about it, and you need to consult everything to us. It's not like that. Both ministers that are here, the Ministry of Environment and Energy and Agriculture and Livestock, always sit down, and of course our Chancellor, our Foreign Affairs Minister, and tell us, what do you think? What is going on? What is your specialty? And they open also the delegation for us. But not only on negotiators, we have youth representatives from NGOs, from the press that are here from Costa Rica. The press is another side, but because of UNFCCC requirements, but also back home. And I want to take you back. So when we get youth here, they help us doing coverage, they help us with anything that the delegation needs. Negotiators that are under 30. But also back home, we have pressure regarding press for climate change. A lot of our newspapers, think tanks that talk about climate change is youth people. It's intergenerational equity. We have it there. We're still seeing how we're going to put this into action that make it to the way that everybody will talk about it back home. But also, we see a lot of empowerment regarding civil society and the movements for achieving our goal. Costa Rica has a goal of carbon neutrality for a long period of time now, but we're on the path of getting there. And we need not only youth, but all society to get on board. And we need that to get the low emission strategies that we already have in place. So also, regarding the negotiations, we also think about getting more people. Most of the time, our ministers already have a lot of experienced people, and now they're opening doors for us to sit down and talk, not only of what we need, but what they have learned, because I think that we need that. We need that exchange. We cannot do it only on ourselves, of course. And I will leave it at that, so we can have maybe some questions or more remarks. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your interventions. And let me say how I appreciated personally, as well as the other member of the Intergenerational Equity Working Group at the UNFCCC, which was born under YOUNGO, that last year even Costa Rica was also extremely helpful for the inclusion of the principle in the text of the Paris Agreement. So I want to acknowledge the great support that that they were able to provide to the group. And so thank you once again for your intervention. We are still waiting a few minutes for Minister Galletti to join us. It was on a last-minute commitment that is currently delaying his arrival. but he will be with us very shortly. So I would take this chance for now to a few questions from the panel for our two speakers, if we have some. And so we can give the floor, please, to, I see a raised hand over there.
Hello? Yeah, it's okay. So, hello, I'm Pierre. I'm the French youth delegate. Well, one of the two French youth delegates. I'm so glad you mentioned it. We are currently building a mapping of different youth representatives program that exist around the world with a lot of people who are currently in this room. And our goal is to write an open letter to the delegation who actually do not have youth representatives to explain what we expect and why they should have one. So, and I would also like to present the ACE working group. Rebecca knows it very well. We wrote also a policy paper for the delegations that also mentioned both ACE focal points and youth representatives. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Does it work? Okay. Hi, it's Sam Loni here from SDSN Youth. And my question goes to both of you. I see quite often that ministers or senior executives from different departments and different countries come and they speak at a youth event. They speak to the delegates and then they leave. They don't wait to listen to the other speakers. And this has become more of a common practice. More and more, I see it every year. What do you think can be done to battle this culture? And why is it so persistent? Why is it so easy to marginalize young people when you yourself say that they are at the core of your national delegations?
Who wants to take this question? Perhaps Ambassador?
Yes, I think for me, if you invite someone, a senior member of the delegation, to come to a youth event and then they leave, it's either one of two things. Either they leave because genuinely they're running from one to the other. I know that. Yes. Or if they really don't have anything that pressing, then it's a sign of yet another person having a token nod towards the youth because it's the chic thing to do. You cannot ignore the youth. And you go to a gender thing, you do the same thing. It's because I have to be seen to be doing it. And it makes good if you're a politician, because I was a minister in my country, I was a politician. It makes good press back home. The way I think when I look at young people is that you were me yesterday. And I hope you will be a better me tomorrow. It's just a phase we're passing through. In society, some people are younger than others, some people are older than others. The day you start making divides, then you create all sorts of problems which could become political in the end. Rather than seeing that a baby born is a citizen of that country and you have to really nurture them to become a better citizen. As long as you think about that, but maybe also it's when the delegations ask their ministers or ambassadors like me to come, they explain to them, could you come and really have a conversation? Don't speak at them, speak with them and have this conversation with them, because it allows us, those of us who are savvy, to realize that there is a really good asset in the room that we can use in our negotiations. But it's only if your own youth also recognize it. So I think it's more a way of thinking that it's taking time to change, that the youth aren't. And I think having them on the delegation and having breakfast with them, or coffee, or lunch, or going to the same cocktail parties helps with that, because then you are in tune with what your youth, your so-called youth members of the delegation. When I came here, I was the invitation came via Dominique, and she says, I know you know what to say, and I said, no, I want you to prepare some speaking points as what do you think I should be saying, not what I think I should be saying about the youth. It may be old-fashioned, it may be condescending, it may be, but I want you to prepare some speaking points as what do you think I should be saying, not what I think I should be saying about the youth. It may be old-fashioned, it may be condescending, it may be, it may be old-fashioned, it may be condescending, it may be old-fashioned, it may be So and I was happy to find what she wrote and what I was thinking are more or less the same thing. But she was the one who wanted a bit about YOUNGO being allowed to speak at UNFCCC, because she was all ready to speak yesterday at the facilitated dialogue, and they weren't allowed to speak. So I decided when she put that, that's when I said, I'm sorry, I forgot something. Shame on me, I forgot it, but at least I remembered it to make the point on her behalf that that is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And His Excellency Minister Gianluca Galletti was just able to join us, so we kindly invite him to join us in panel for his intervention. And please welcome him with a round of applause. Before it starts, let me say how grateful we are with Minister Galletti for the great support that he provided to us last year, as well as Costa Rica. Italy was a crucial player in promoting intergenerational equity and youth participation to the UNFCCC. And perhaps without these great contributions, now intergenerational equity would not be explicitly mentioned in the preamble of the Paris Agreement. So let me take this chance to thank him. Last year, we had the chance to sign on a declaration on intergenerational equity, for which the minister expressed his support. So I think it is now the best intervention to tell us how he thinks we can actually take another step and go to the phase 2, which is implementation of the principle. So Minister, please, you have the floor.
Grazie dell'invito e non vi nascondo che partecipo molto volentieri a questo vostro evento, perché fin dal primo momento che ho incominciato, che ho preso la carica di Ministro dell'Ambiente, ho iniziato a partecipare ai lavori preparativi di quella che è stata prima la COP di Lima e poi la COP di Parigi, le due a cui ho partecipato. Ho sentito molto il tema che voi avete posto e l'ho sentito come un tema etico-morale imprescindibile, e ho capito anche dopo l'enciclica del Papa, la Laudato Si, quanto fosse importante il motivo di inserire le vostre richieste nell'accordo di Parigi. E anche se sono andate nel preambolo, ahimè, io avrei voluto che avessero più forza in un articolo dell'accordo di Parigi. Credo che oggi noi dobbiamo su quelle premesse lavorare molto, affinché anche qui a Marrakech, dove di fatto stiamo scrivendo i decreti attuativi dell'accordo di Parigi, stiamo entrando nella redazione delle regole dell'accordo di Parigi, il tema che voi ponete sia messo al centro di quelle regole. Io questo lo sento come un valore etico-morale davvero importante. Diciamo sempre che l'accordo di Parigi è molto più che un agreement sul surriscaldamento globale, ma prefigura, lo sappiamo, un nuovo ordine mondiale basato su un nuovo modello economico, quello della green economy, quello dell'economia circolare. Ebbene, questo nuovo ordine mondiale è una proiezione che i governi di tutto il mondo hanno fatto per i prossimi decenni. Ci siamo dati dei traguardi lontani. Nell'accordo noi parliamo di accordi al 2050, addirittura di accordi al 2100, di obiettivi al 2050, di obiettivi al 2100. Quello che stiamo cercando di costruire con l'intesa dell'anno scorso, con il lavoro di queste giornate qui in Marrakech, quindi non è il nostro mondo, non è il mondo della mia generazione, non è il mondo di chi oggi ha 50-60 anni, io sono in mezzo, ne ho 55. Stiamo lavorando per un mondo che speriamo sia meno surriscaldato per i nostri figli e per i nostri nipoti. È forse la prima volta nella storia che una generazione politica non lavora per se stesso, ma sostanzialmente soprattutto per le prossime generazioni. Io trovo questo davvero straordinario, per questo dico che l'accordo di Parigi Questo tema dell'accordo di Parigi è un tema fondamentale di tutto l'accordo. D'altronde, come altro definire un'intesa i cui effetti positivi, se lavoreremo coerentemente e coscientemente nei prossimi decenni, cominceranno a farsi sentire solo nella seconda metà di questo secolo. Sono oltre 20 anni che si discute del global warming, ma solo nel 2015, al termine di un lungo percorso di consapevolezza e di assunzione di responsabilità delle classi dirigenti, il tema dell'equità generazionale è entrato a pieno titolo nei documenti internazionali come elemento qualificante e fondante, e questo anche grazie a voi e all'azione che avete fatto. Un elemento che rafforza il senso morale della sfida per l'ambiente, evidenziando come gli effetti delle attività umane del passato stiano condizionando l'ambiente su cui oggi viviamo e come le scelte che facciamo oggi saranno decisive per il pianeta in cui vivranno le future generazioni. Con una differenza però. Ieri non esistevano conoscenze adeguate e piena consapevolezza dell'effetto delle attività umane sulle risorse naturali e sul clima. Oggi queste coscienze le abbiamo e di conseguenza non abbiamo più scuse per non agire. Non abbiamo attenuanti nei confronti di chi verrà dopo di noi ad abitare il mondo. Guardate, io non ho il debito generazionale, il debito ambientale verso i miei genitori che i miei figli potrebbero avere verso di me. Io non posso prendermela con i miei genitori più di tanto per come hanno trattato il mondo. I miei genitori sono quelli in Italia, nel mio paese, della ricostruzione dopo la guerra mondiale, dopo la seconda guerra mondiale. Loro avevano come obiettivo in Italia, dopo il 1945, di ricostruire un paese, di portare fuori dalla povertà migliaia di persone, e non sapevano se l'amianto faceva male o non faceva male, non sapevano quanto male il carbone facesse all'atmosfera del nostro pianeta. E loro l'hanno fatto in maniera egregia, hanno fatto del mio paese la settima potenza più industrializzata del mondo. Hanno dato a me proprio, no? Possibilità di vivere bene, di avere tante cose che altri ragazzi della mia età in tanti paesi del mondo non avevano. Non abbiamo solo sconfitto la fame, abbiamo avuto benessere, abbiamo avuto progresso. E allora io non posso dire di avere un debito verso i miei genitori. I miei figli invece potrebbero dirmelo, potrebbero averlo, potrebbero un giorno rinfacciarmi di non aver agito oggi, perché oggi io so quanto male fa bruciare il carbone, so che il progresso non è tutto, che in nome del progresso non possiamo togliere il futuro alle generazioni che verranno. Io questo lo so. E allora è questa la generazione, la mia generazione, quella che di più deve agire, perché la mia generazione che è chiamata a rispondere delle conoscenze scientifiche e di utilizzare bene quel progresso che ha avuto dai propri genitori, di non utilizzarlo solo per soddisfare i propri bisogni materiali, no? Per stare meglio, ancora meglio di quello che già sta, ma deve utilizzare il proprio benessere al servizio degli altri, al servizio delle future generazioni, ma io dico anche a servizio di coloro che questo benessere non l'hanno ancora raggiunto e che meritano di raggiungerlo e che non possono essere private di quel benessere che noi abbiamo raggiunto. Penso ai paesi africani, penso a tante zone del mondo che oggi ci dicono adesso tocca a noi, no? Adesso tocca a noi venire fuori dalla povertà, avere tutto quello che voi avete avuto 50 anni fa. E allora noi dobbiamo riuscire a invertire la nostra economia e nel contempo noi paesi industrializzati abbiamo un peso di responsabilità in più. Andare in quei paesi e aiutarli a non commettere i nostri errori, ma salvaguardando il loro diritto ad industrializzarsi, ad avere benessere. E mi permetto di dirlo, lo dico a voi giovani in particolare, lo dobbiamo fare anche con un po' di egoismo, con un egoismo che l'Europa deve avere nei confronti degli altri paesi. Noi oggi siamo in crisi per migrazioni di centinaia di migliaia di persone che abbandonano il proprio paese perché lì non ci sono condizioni di vivibilità come le nostre. Alcuni paesi, l'Italia non è fra quelli e io condanno chi ha questo atteggiamento, pensano di risolvere il problema elevando dei muri. pensano di proteggere il proprio piccolo benessere con un muro contro la povertà. Io non so se quel progetto riuscirà o meno, io non lo condivido, non so che effetto avrà. Io so che questo però in ambiente non funziona, perché la povertà forse si può fermare con un muro, ma l'inquinamento non si ferma con un muro. E se noi non ci mettiamo d'accordo tutti, per combattere il vero nemico che abbiamo, che sono i cambiamenti climatici, perdiamo tutti. Non è che se io alzo un muro e faccio una politica ambientale corretta sono salvo. Devo fare una politica ambientale corretta e convincere gli altri a fare altrettanto e aiutare gli altri a fare altrettanto. Allora oggi se io penso ai miei figli, penso anche al mio vicino, penso anche ai paesi africani, perché per salvare i miei figli devo anche salvare i paesi africani, devo salvare le piccole isole. È questo il contenuto grandissimo dell'accordo di Parigi. È questo il messaggio universale della Laudato Si del Papa, quando ci ricorda il concetto di ecologia integrale. È come se ci dicesse o ci salviamo tutti o non si salva nessuno. E io credo che sia questo il faro a cui dobbiamo sempre tendere quando siamo in queste conferenze e anche nell'agire di tutti i giorni, almeno per chi ha responsabilità come me. Guardate, il Papa ce lo dice in maniera chiarissima. C'è un passaggio bellissimo nell'enciclica che a un certo punto dice ai politici il Papa, non vi nascondete, sembra una contraddizione detto qui, dietro la frase lo facciamo per i nostri figli, assumetevi le vostre responsabilità, lo dice a noi governanti, dice salvare il mondo non lo dovete fare per i vostri figli, lo dovete fare per voi, perché è una responsabilità vostra, al di là del concetto etico, del concetto cattolico, del concetto religioso, no? Di salvare il mondo perché è un dono di Dio e che tu devi conservare. Al di là, richiama ognuno di noi alle proprie responsabilità proprie, personali. Lo dobbiamo sentire come una responsabilità personale di ognuno di noi. Noi governanti di più, ma tutti i cittadini del mondo devono sentirlo in questo senso. Dicevo, dal 2015 è stato un anno determinante per l'assunzione di responsabilità dell'equità internazionale grazie a 3 tappe fondamentali che ho già ricordato. In maggio il Papa nell'enciclica Laudato Si ha dedicato un intero capitolo, il quinto, alla giustizia fra le generazioni. Dice il Papa, ormai non si può più parlare di sviluppo sostenibile senza una solidarietà fra le generazioni. Non stiamo parlando di un atteggiamento opzionale, bensì di una questione essenziale di giustizia, dal momento che la terra che abbiamo ricevuto appartiene a coloro che verranno. Secondo il pontefice c'è bisogno di costruire leadership che indicano strade cercando di rispondere alla necessità delle generazioni attuali, includendo tutti senza compromettere le generazioni future. Necessità delle generazioni attuali, io, includendo tutti, tutto il mondo, tenendo presente che non bisogna compromettere la possibilità delle generazioni future di abitare su questo pianeta. Io credo che in questa frase ci sia tutto, guardate, questa vale per credenti e non credenti, il Papa all'inizio della sua enciclica lo dice, si rivolge a tutti i cittadini del mondo, quindi non lo dico da credente, non cito il Papa da credente, lo cito perché queste parole riassumono il contenuto, tutta l'etica morale che c'è all'interno anche dell'accordo di Parigi. Il monito lanciato all'umanità è stato chiarissimo ed è caduto, è vero, su un terreno fertile. Da tempo, infatti, in sede di Nazioni Unite questo tema era oggetto di confronto fra le organizzazioni della gioventù ed i rappresentanti degli Stati. Così, a settembre del 2015, in occasione della presentazione dei nuovi obiettivi per lo sviluppo sostenibile in vista del 2030, si affermava che il futuro dell'umanità e del nostro pianeta è nelle nostre mani ed è anche nelle mani delle giovani generazioni di oggi che passeranno il testimone alle future generazioni. Con queste autorevoli premesse dell'altissima autorità morale del pontefice del più importante consesso internazionale qual è l'ONU, le ultime parole che ho letto, ci siamo apprestati nel dicembre 2015 a scrivere le premesse del Trattato di Parigi, il trattato di quello che io definisco il nuovo ordine mondiale. ed in quelle premesse per la prima volta ha trovato spazio di rilievo nel preambolo il diritto dell'equità intergenerazionale. Un diritto riconosciuto ai giovani, che non è il solo diritto ad avere un futuro, a ricevere da noi governanti attuali un mondo di condizioni di piena vivibilità, ma è anche il diritto dei giovani a dire come la pensano, su un pianeta che è già oggi molto più loro che nostro. È anche il diritto a partecipare alle scelte che ricadranno sulla loro vita e sulla vita dei loro figli. È il diritto a condividere le decisioni sul mondo di domani. Io credo che questo sia un passaggio fondamentale. Il fatto di condividere con voi le scelte che facciamo oggi. Se queste scelte riguardano prevalentemente il vostro futuro e il futuro dei vostri figli, allora noi dobbiamo queste scelte condividerle con voi. Perché voi sarete quelli che non solo le dovranno portare avanti, ma le potranno modificare, le potranno migliorare, avranno nuove conoscenze scientifiche e quindi noi abbiamo il dovere di educarvi e di scegliere insieme a voi in questa prospettiva. Questo è lo spirito con cui l'Italia l'anno scorso a Parigi ha sostenuto l'inserimento di quella clausola nella premessa dell'agreement. Questo, e lo dico con forza qui, è lo spirito con cui l'Italia oggi qui ascolta i giovani e intende farsi portavoce delle loro istanze e della loro partecipazione al processo di attuazione dell'accordo sul clima. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your intervention. I think what I really appreciated and is the commitment that Italy, as well as the distinguished guest that had the chance to speak in before, there is the concrete will of parties in this new process that started in in Paris last year, COP21, with the Paris Agreement, of a deeper involvement of civil society in general and young people in particular. Let me be very frank. It might be considered just easy to speak on in favor of young people, but I think the people we have in panel today, our distinguished guest, showed us very clearly with concrete actions last year, and I'm sure listening to the words that this will continue from now and in the next future, that they are actually willing to concretely support us. We had a positive experience, the International Youth Climate Movement, and in particular, when we are talking about intergenerational equity, the Intergenerational Equity Working Group could really feel the support of these countries, of these distinguished guests we have today. And I think this is an extremely positive message for the future. Countries actually supporting young people, listening to young people, and potentially, of course, there are many considerations to be done, but potentially endorsing the proposals that young people proved to be able to submit in the last few years. So I would ask you a kind round of applause for all our guests who intervened in this panel. And I think maybe we have time just for a couple of questions, if there is a question for the minister from the floor before he leaves for previous commitments. Yes.
Hi, this is Li Heqing, a university professor from Taiwan. And I'm so glad to be here to join this opportunity, and especially those very high-sounding words shared by the minister and from Hope. My question is to raise the international profile of the youth participation. Issue-wise, what will be the good approach? You know, if we're going to emphasize, say, the health-related issues, or trade-related issues, or maybe the negative impacts of the extreme weathers, in order to raise the alarm, or at least to raise the profile of the youth participation, because climate change is a creeping phenomenon, and then with a profound impact in the future, and maybe in the long future. Thank you so much.
Please, Minister, if you want. Se vuole rispondere.
Non ho capito. Io sono molto d'accordo su quanto diceva la professoressa. Credo che, come ho detto prima, il tema dei cambiamenti climatici è un tema globale che ha a che fare con tutti i settori, ha a che fare con il settore dell'economia, cambierà il modo di produrre, dall'economia lineare all'economia circolare, ha a che fare con il diritto alla salute, nel senso che il diritto alla salute è minacciato dai cambiamenti climatici. Avrà a che fare, lo dicevamo prima, con le migrazioni. Quindi migrazioni vuol dire con le migrazioni rischiamo scontri religiosi, rischiamo guerre, quindi ha a che fare con la pace nel mondo. È integrale, come ci diceva il Papa. E proprio per questo io ribadisco che il fatto di ascoltare i giovani da una parte e di mettere al centro delle politiche che attueremo, l'attenzione verso i giovani sia fondamentale. Poi è chiaro che questo va fatto insieme. Voi siete giovani oggi, lo sarete un po' meno nel 2020 e lo sarete ancora meno nel 2040 e nel 2050. Nel 2100 sarete vecchi anche voi, se Dio vuole, non lo sarò solamente io, no? Quindi lo sarete voi. Quindi è un concetto che noi dobbiamo tenere vivo e ce lo dobbiamo trasmettere gli uni con gli altri man mano che andiamo avanti. Io l'invito che vi faccio è: non scordatevi domani quello che dite oggi, cioè l'atteggiamento che avete oggi mantenetelo vivo, insegnatelo ai vostri figli e aiutate i vostri figli a fare quello che noi stiamo provando a fare per voi.
Thank you very much, Minister. And please, a last round of applause for all our speakers and who intervene at this session. So let me now invite on stage the next speakers for the second session of our side event. So let me invite Ms. Francesca Mingrone from Italian Climate Network, and I will let Rebecca introduce the other speakers from the Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition.
Hi, these are the two speakers from Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition, and they are all first copers. They are our youth delegates from our organizations, and our organizations, which is Taiwan Youth Climate Coalitions, is basically focused on youth empowerment. So they are going to talk about our youth empowerment project in Taiwan. You can speak first. Ms. Kwan Ying Lee and Wan Ting Shi, you can have the floor.
Hello everyone, I'm Kwan Ying. This is Wan Ting and this is Siru. We are happy to be here and supported by Green Club and ICDI. Wan Ting and I are going to talk about intergenerational equity and youth empowerment projects in Taiwan. And Siru will make a conclusion for us. We are all from Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition, TWYCC. TWYCC started from 2011, and we tried our best to expand the youth climate improvement both nationally and internationally. TWYCC have 4 clear missions, which are climate change, youth power, nonprofit, and information sharing. Humanity's actions in the past have led to the consequence faced today, placing the burden on this generation as well as the next generation. This is an urgent obstacle that must be faced, and we will work hard every step of the way to make our world a better place. In the past few years, we have tried to cooperate with local governments and create a quite successful experience in Taichung City. However, we are still struggling to have some more connection with other cities. TWYCC have a 1-year project with Taichung Carbon City Promotion Office, and we aim to raise the awareness of reducing the emission of carbon dioxide. We hold several activities, including visiting Taichung thermal power plant, from wind farm in government wetland and low carbon communities. After field visiting, TWYCC members had a field research with the residents, asking their opportunity about the 2 low power plants, and delivering the first-hand information receiving through our visiting to them, hoping to build a bridge between the office and the neighborhood around, making everything transparent. And now we are planning to hold forums to talking about the image of sustainable cities. Unfortunately, the situation is different when we try to cooperate with other local governments. We have tried to submit some projects to them, but we were turned down because of a lack of finance and human resource. And the most important thing is that there isn't an integrated and effective system for we youth to fully participate in the issue of climate change. The Earth's future is the responsibility of the next generation. As a youth, we must show the next generation the power of the youth in changing the atmosphere in climate change negotiations, and the direction that the world is working toward. We hope that the voice of the youth and other generation of the parties can all be heard in the near future, so that all of us can all work together.
Hello, I'm Xu Wanting from Taiwan, and in the following section, I'd like to show you the core value of youth empowerment and the implemental experience in Taiwan Youth Climate Coalitions. We believe that youth empowerment is a bunch of concentric circles, and the first step is to let them know, to let them start to engage in these discussions. And the second is to provide the comprehensive information. And the third is to lead strategy to action. And Taiwan Power Shift, TPS, is what we've been doing for 3 years to encourage more and more young people to engage in these concentric circles. Before the cast of TPS, I'd like to provide you the current situation and difficulty we face in Taiwan and even in East Asia. The problem is that most of people is only care about disaster reduction caused by extreme weather. But it is hard to ask people to save the energy, to support this divestment in terms of sustainability and resilience. Therefore, the core value of TPS is to raise the awareness by education and communication. In TPS, we designed several comprehensive and general courses and lectures for youth. Aside from this lecture and courses, there are 3 main sections in TPS. First, field research. In this section, we lead our attendants to visit the local communities, the local companies which are concerning with the climate change and working on the climate actions. Through this section, attendants could learn how to listen to the voice of the local and how to act locally. And second, climate negotiation game. We met attendants represent different countries to simulate the climate negotiation. Through this game, they can easily understand the perspective of different countries, different parties, and different stakeholders, and how these complicated realities lead to the international negotiation. Last but not least, the proposal. We don't want this 3-day effort start after the TPS. Therefore, in the last day of TPS, attendants would hand in a proposal for the further action. We hope that all the attendants can bring the experience back to their family, back to their school, back to their communities, to encourage more and more people to engage into the action. We are here gathering together, talking about climate change, but how to act locally is the key to response to the issues. And one of the most important steps would be the youth participation. We believe that youth have more power to help to see the climate change issue into actions, engage more individuals, and enable them to be the part of the solutions. Thank you.
Francisca, you may have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. So intergenerational equity is one of the core principles of the idea of sustainable development, and the Paris Agreement is the first international environmental treaty that mentions such a principle. The inclusion of the principle of intergenerational equity into the Paris Agreement has shown how effective and fruitful the dialogue and collaboration between youth and government can be. And this should be the first step of a long path towards concrete action for the protection of the environment, future generations, and of course, current generations. As the Italian Climate Network, we're working in very close collaboration with other youth associations, and we are interacting with the Italian government, which has played a crucial role in the mentioning of the intergenerational equity principle in the Paris Agreement, and we are sure it will continue to be a very responsive and open interlocutor. In my speech, I first will focus on three possible ways to implement intergenerational equity. We have developed them in coordination with other youth associations from around the world. Specifically, we have focused on three areas: NDCs, so the nationally determined contributions, youth participation, and education. And finally, I will talk very briefly about the role of domestic courts in the implementation of the principle of intergenerational equity. So the national determined contributions that so far have been submitted don't go beyond 2030. Along with NDCs, both the Paris Agreement in Article 4 and the COP21 decision, paragraph 36, encourage parties to set long-term low greenhouse gas emission development strategies. So parties might submit long-term NDCs at first on a voluntary basis, and then we hope that a future COP decision will make them mandatory, preferably with a 2050 target year. And in fact, a long-term approach is one of the essential elements of the Paris Agreement. Related to NDCs is the concept of social discount rate, which is used in cost-benefit analysis by governments when implementing policies, social policies, or planning new infrastructures, or in our case, implementing environmentally friendly projects. Social discount rates inform the economic studies underlying countries' future policies. And so upon it depends the actual relevance that is given to future generation. The higher the social discount rate it is, the less importance is given to future generations. And so the less likely it is for an ambitious long-term project is to be achieved and implemented. So what we ask parties is to actually use as more favorable as possible social discount rates in their NDCs. And also, because Article 4 and 13 call upon parties to enhance transparency, we also ask them to disclose the social discount rate they actually use when communicating their NDCs. Another key field in which intergenerational equity could and should be operationalized are education and youth participation. Article 12 of the Paris Agreement states that parties shall take measures to enhance climate change, education, public participation, and access. And we think that ambitious goals can be only achieved when a country's population is aware of the challenges that climate change poses and is able to engage in discussion with policymakers. As youth members, we are the most suited to represent properly the interests and the needs of both current and future generations. And so we really need to be educated and involved. So as some countries are already doing, classes of environmental sciences and policies should be included and provided at all levels of the education system. And also, as the ambassador from Seychelles rightly pointed out, we really need more involvement in the UNFCCC process. So we really urge parties to include young members in their official delegation to the Conference of Parties. And in fact, education and youth involvement combined together can actually create generations of very conscious and well-prepared future leaders who will be able to tackle all the environmentally related issues that unfortunately they will inherit from the past. Finally, I will be very brief. Let me spend some few words on the role of courts. Courts play a very important role in implementing any law principle, both at the domestic and international level. And this also applies to intergenerational equity. I will quote some 3 cases, very recent and very relevant to what we're talking about. We do not have time here to talk about the facts, so we'll just mention the legal reasoning that has been made by the courts. In the Urgenda Foundation and Netherlands case in June 2015, the Hague District Court recalled the principle of fairness, stating that the state should implement policies that are also beneficial to future generations. The court stated that if, according to the current insights, it turns out to be cheaper on balance to act now, the state should have a serious obligation arising from due care towards future generations to act accordingly. In the Stella and others and Washington Department of Ecology in November 2015, the Superior Court of the State of Washington stated that the state's Department of Ecology has a mandatory duty to protect the air quality for future generations. And another very recent case is Caciagli Cascade and the US before the US District Court of Oregon in April 2016. It is interesting to notice that one of the plaintiffs participated as a guardian for future generations. But what really interests us today is that the court recalled the principle of the public trust doctrine, which holds that the government has a responsibility to manage natural resources such as ocean fisheries or navigable rivers for future generations. These are not the only cases where courts refer to future generations, and actually the principle of intergenerational equity lies within some legal principles, such as the public trust doctrine I've just mentioned. And also, future generations are mentioned in some of constitutions, such as the Constitution of Japan, Norway, and Ecuador. So, in conclusion, it is clear that although we're still far from operationalizing effectively the principle of intergenerational equity, we don't lack legal tools, which is a very important starting point. What we really need now is political will worldwide. However, let me say that if I think about all the great progresses we have made over the last years, and I look at the panel, a very high-level speakers we had at this conference, I am definitely hopeful and optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca, and thank you very much to all those who spoke on behalf of Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition. I think these are extremely important proposals that we're making here. We really hope that the parties, representatives that attended our previous panel will actually have a chance of endorsing this proposal. And I'm sure we had some good signs from their speeches today. So I would now please ask you for a round of applause to all our speakers for the next change of panel. And I would kindly invite to join us in panel Mr. Timothy Damon, YOUNGO Global North Focal Point, Ms. Miriam Holguin, YOUNGO Global South Focal Point, Mr. Siamak Loni, Global Coordinator Sustainable Development Solution Network Youth, and Ms. Nuhad Awwad, Head of Regional Policy Team at the Arab Youth Climate Movement. Okay. So I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Timothy Damon, who served as 2016 YOUNGO focal point for the Global North, for an intervention, in his opinion, especially basing upon his expertise and experience on intergenerational equity. What can we do now? And what are the next challenges that young people have to face in the world to see these principles implemented? Tim, you have the floor.
Grazie mille, Federico. It's my pleasure to be here and to be, as we are really celebrating the accomplishment of getting intergenerational equity into the Paris Agreement, but also really now taking the next step of what do those two words in the preamble really mean? What's the difference that's going to make? And already you've heard some really good examples from Francesca and the other speakers about what does it mean for social discount rates? My master's thesis topic, by the way, I'll plug that much. And then also for inclusion of youth delegates, other official speakers. But what about youth education? What about youth empowerment and participation? So I think really intergenerational equity's manifestation is largely going to come about through this umbrella of topics, which in the weird language of the UNFCCC are referred to as ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment, which originated as Article 6 of the convention, Framework Convention. And I'm happy to have some of my ACE colleagues in the room who have been working very diligently on this over the 2 weeks that we've been here. But really, again, let's make this concrete. So how can we get more young people engaged? One of these that I would propose is a fellowship program, which would bring young people to the COP, but not just to fund their ticket and an accommodation. It's not enough to bring young people just to be physically present. They need to be effective. So you need to understand this technical, difficult process. So I would propose launching this initiative from the Bonn session, and then you have about a month or so to pick these people, and then you have several more months in which to do capacity building online. YOUNGO has a wealth of people who have been to many, many COPs. Federico, all of my colleagues, myself, my 5th COP here in Marrakesh. So we have this expertise. We just need to get it to people and then get those people here where they can actually do something. And then you also have them engage their local community before they come to COP and after they come to COP. And then they're part of an alumni network so that you actually make a meaningful progress each time you do this. You're not always starting over, because as YOUNGO, we're all volunteers. Oftentimes we find ourselves having to start over quite a bit because people come and go, and that's natural. We're youth. Not very many young people can afford to be here in money or in time. You're students, you need a job. I mean, come on, we don't get paid to come here and do what we do. We do it because we're passionate, but that only gets you so far. And then another concrete proposal is, I'm very pleased to draw attention to a pilot training workshop on climate diplomacy, how to do campaigns on climate change, how to engage at the UNFCCC, but also domestically. And this was conducted as a training in Mauritius, and it was run for youth for all the SIDS countries and also the Commonwealth countries. Mauritius is, of course, also a Commonwealth member. And this workshop was very successful and concretely empowered young people to run the local conference of youth, which happened in Mauritius. So they had their capacity built to run that, along with over a dozen other local COIs that happened in addition to the main one here in Marrakesh in the days right before COP. And then also several youth from Mauritius, Seychelles, Rodrigues, these other SIDS countries were able to come here. And they actually, had a leg to stand on in the negotiations and to be effective. They said, it was still quite challenging coming into my first COP, but that training really enabled me to hit the ground running, to really be able to have some semblance of what to do. So why couldn't we, and they're already planning from the Mauritius folks to run this again, even bigger and better for next year. Why couldn't we replicate that for young people in every region, especially throughout the Global South, where there's the greatest need for this? And there can be linkages between the fellowships and these workshops. So these are just 2 concrete examples. Obviously, we could also discuss network building, how to foster more collaboration between young people throughout the year. There's linkages to the ACE national focal points and their mandate, which the ACE working group is, again, phenomenal job in making those linkages. So there's really a lot of exciting things that I think we can see from an ACE perspective. And again, ACE is intergenerational equity based, off of that principle. So I'll wrap up here, but certainly happy to field questions from everyone. And also I will just again plug that now that I'm retiring, as it were, from being YOUNGO Focal Point, I've created a new NGO, the Global Youth Development Institute, to network with all of my amazing friends and colleagues from YOUNGO and also from non-YOUNGOs. And so I see both of these projects I've mentioned as things which we will be helping to run. And also make sure you pay attention to this hashtag #GiveYouthAChance, because that's a finance mobilization initiative we've just launched last week. It's got partners from Austria, the United States, climates from France, from China, and this is really going to be a big way to get the finance piece to implement all of these nice things that I just talked about. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. And now let's hear the voice of the second YOUNGO focal point who served this year, Miriam, who's as being in the Global South represents all of the young organizations that actually usually experience the worst effects of climate change. So Miriam, please, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Federico, for this invitation, and to the Italian Climate Network and the Taiwan Youth Movement. So I will focus my intervention on the Global South and how we can engage the participation of the Global South youth, and especially how can we integrate this youth that is, as Federico said, we are the population, or we come from the countries that are having the biggest impacts of climate change. So, which is the role in this? Which is the role of YOUNGO in this particular topic? So, I would like to start by saying that YOUNGO has the status as an official constituency of the United Nations framework of Conference of Climate Change. So this in my opinion, we should use this status for advocacy, for advocate at the international level, because sometimes at national level, the people from the Global South, for the people from the Global South, it's really hard to get in contact with their government. So we will find in the practice that there are many barriers that will not let the people who are interested to follow this kind of processes, because we, as Tim already said, we have lack of funding, we have lack of access to the badges. It will be really great if we have more countries like Seychelles or the Costa Rican government that has youth delegates and provide this kind of badges to the youth and to the young people. But in fact, it's not. One of the first problems that we have, the people from the Global South, is that it's complicated to get an accreditation for coming to these spaces. Then the fact that it's really expensive for us to come until here. So also the problem of funding, it's a particular topic. And also we have other problems, like for example the language barriers. Many persons who come from the Global South are not English native speakers, and they have many problems for communicating in spaces like this. And they have even if we can bring this person, or even if these persons can arrive to come to these spaces, we need to provide some resources for integrate these persons, because otherwise it will not work. So foreseeing which are the concrete actions that we have made inside of YOUNGO, I would like to talk to you, for example, about the Global South funding experience that we had last year for COP 2021. From YOUNGO, we asked the French government to support our program of scholarships, and we could bring 21 persons from the Global South. It was, as we already said, it was really important because it was COP21, and it's really, and we could hear and we could meet many interesting persons who were coming from communities that are the most vulnerable and the most affected of impacts of climate change. But the most important, I guess, is that they bring many examples of resilience and very interesting projects that they are putting in action in their communities for fighting against climate change. So this program was a great opportunity for many of the persons. It was, in some cases, it was just the opportunity that many persons were looking for. It was really grateful to see some of these persons that this year they could also come to the COP22 because they already could get the contacts and make the networking that they needed for having this for being in these spaces. So one of the topics that is important in YOUNGO is to work in this kind of projects, in this kind of programs, but not as like a project only for the important COPs, like the COP21, but to have programs that will be permanent on time, and especially with not only for COP, also for the intersessional, because, for example, during the intersessional that we have in May, we have in Bonn, many of the important topics for youth are aborded. For example, the education dialogue, it's made during this session. So it's important to have not only people from the global north, also people from the global south, and so that is one of our biggest challenge. So we hope that we will official program for funding these persons, and not only for funding, but for having these persons for incorporate these persons in a real way.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Unfortunately, we are very short with time, so we need to keep the interventions a bit shorter than we expected. Apologies for that. Thank you very much, Miriam. So please, I would like now to give the floor to Siamak Loni, Global Coordinator, Sustainable Development Solution Network Youth. And I will kindly ask him as well to be as concise as possible, as unfortunately we're a bit running out of time. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure being here, and I will be short. But usually when people say that, they tend to go for about 40 minutes, so I'll do my best. And a special thank you to the ambassador who has left. And in fact, before he left, he came and asked for permission, which was very nice. He said, by the way, I have something at 6 o'clock, I've got to leave. I said, that's all right. But we have just concluded the Low Emission Solutions Conference, the first of its kind at COP, which ran over the past 3 days here with the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, which I'm from, ICLEI, as well as the government of Morocco. And it was just 3 days of bringing together all these different solutions for basically decarbonizing the energy systems and reaching zero net emissions by 2050. But I think the sentiments there are that the Paris Agreement is not going to be enough. We're going to blow over the carbon budget. We're almost there. We need some urgency. Paris was a great step, but it's not enough. We actually need to think about how we can make it happen. And that's what the low emission development strategies came from. But that's not just a question for governments. That's a question for young entrepreneurs, for engineers, for universities, for the private sector. Many people play a role. We are asking about a transformation, and yet we're going to continue to do what we do and expect different results. I don't need to tell you what the definition of that is, but it seems we are going in that direction. So if we want to really decarbonize the energy system and implement the Paris Agreement, we're going to have to look at 3 things. Firstly, We need more investment in renewable energy research. And that information, that research, to be concise and available as a public good. So that students, entrepreneurs, businesses, everyday people can access this information, the latest research, the latest technologies, and use that to create businesses around achieving low carbon. And I think young people can play a very important role in that. And I'll come to it. So we need to create an ecosystem for information. Second, we need to create a system for entrepreneurship, a market, if you like. We need to let 1,000 flowers bloom here. By investing in renewable energy and in investing in the future and all the green economy, we shouldn't just be giving the money to big companies for this. We should also provide small grants for young entrepreneurs. And I've been coming across this thing called the Youth Solutions Report, which we're launching, which just shows the creativity of young people. It is extraordinary. And there is actually scientific research into this, that young people are creative and they lose their creative capacity as they get older. So, and this is a neurological process called functional fixedness and fluid intelligence. I won't go into it because we don't have time, but it is a proven case. This doesn't mean that creativity is enough, but it means if this creativity is matched with the experience, the power, and the influence of older generations in an intergenerational effort, then that's where the magic starts to happen. We need the creativity and fresh ideas. Finally, we need to think about national pathways. So the reason I say that is, in Australia, a couple of decades ago, an Australian Prime Minister, which is where I'm from, Bob Hawke, we were in a huge crisis, and he brought together, he said, you know what, I don't think we can fix this just with the government. He created a nationwide consultancy. Basically, he started consulting and brought together businesses in a few meetings. He brought businesses, he brought civil society, young people, and he put all the information on the desk, on the table. He said, this is the mess we're in. What should we do? I'm open to ideas. Let's do it. And actually, that helped bring Australia out of a deep recession, and it led us to where we are now. And if we can do the same thing with businesses, celebrate success, like Unilever, what Paul Pullman has been doing, Telstra in Australia has been doing fantastic work, but also bring NGOs. NGOs are important in preparing communities. Otherwise, we're going to have Brexit-style reaction from the people of communities are not prepared for this transformation. If a community is not ready for the transformation, we need to get NGOs and young people. There are 3.5 billion of them, by the way, so if we want them on board, we should talk about them being in the present, not in the future. You need to prepare the community, and communities of young people and NGOs can play a critical role in that. And just to wrap up, let's not forget about universities. Let us not forget about universities, because they are the centers where thousands and thousands of students gather. It is a place where they can, the future generations and the learning comes through, but also the creativity can come and be matched with knowledge for real stuff to happen. Finally, just to wrap up, we shouldn't just rely on despite what I've said, we shouldn't just rely on the renewable energy revolution. Look at the projections. They're not going to be enough. Technology is not going to get us there. We also need to address the big elephant in the room, which is behavior change, our consumption patterns. Guess who's more likely to adopt and accept new ways of living? Young people, children. They're more likely to think about and be vegetarians if they learn at a young age. They're more likely to think about a lifestyle that involves public transport, that involves cycling, if they're taught at a young age and if they're engaged at a young age. An 80-year-old person or a 50 or 60-year-old person is more unlikely to change their lifestyle
because that's how they've been brought up. It's common sense. So behavior change needs to be addressed, and young people are at the core of that. So let's not forget, we got a very creative generation. There are a lot of them, and these are going to be future consumers, future businessmen, future professionals.
Thank you so much.
Finally, the idealism that we need for them. So with that, I wrap up, and I hope that was...
Thank you very much for your comprehension. Please give an applause. I will now give the floor to Awwad, Head of Regional Policy Team, our Youth Climate Movement, after going very quickly through the conclusions. Thank you very much.
I will be concise. First, hello everybody. I want to highlight something what Miriam said. Like I've received the TWYCC scholarship for COP21, and I agree with what our friend said about change is more in youth than on old people, and we have touched this in our work. AYCM Arab Youth Climate Movement had started in 2012 before COP18 in Doha. We are present in 17 Arab countries. Why climate change? For many reasons. We as Arab countries, we are affected by severe droughts and affected by severe extreme weathers. For example, there was a cyclone called Jumeau happened in Oman in 2007. Not only this, but also many other activities, many other effects. One of the studies made by University of North Carolina stated that about 37 million Arab person will get affected by the sea level rise. 16 out of those 37 million people are from Egypt. In addition, we're gonna have problems in food security, and also we're gonna have coastal areas problems and, as I mentioned, extreme weathers. For this, we decided to empower youth. And also, not only we are youth, not only we work with youth, we have also followed the intergenerational equity mentioned in Paris Agreement by empowering women in rural areas and training them on adaptation and on how to work with the limited amount of water in their agricultural activities. We also had made several activities for children, and one of them was WASH. We followed WASH by going to schools and telling them how to eat healthy and how to live in a and how to eat healthy and how to wash their hands and how to be healthy kids. These activities, in addition to many other activities, were done in different areas. The third point I'm willing to mention is the youth program that was initiated this year. It is the Youth Delegates program initiated in COP22. Our friend Frederick had talked about it, but I'm going to enlarge more. And we as Arab Youth Climate Movement had taken the role to help in this. First of all, as youth delegates, we initiated a blog, and this blog is open to all the youth. Youth will gonna write in it, and even if I am no more a delegate, I will tell my fellow delegates and to write on it. Next, we discussed an opportunity that was mentioned by Germany. Germany's last year initiated a program of funding a Global South programs to engage the youth. And also we mentioned how to, as Arab youth, to approach our governments and discuss with them the opportunity of implementing this program. Not only this, but also we decided to write an open letter to the delegates of our head countries, and currently we are writing policy paper to represent our point of view. This and all others will be put on our Facebook page and will be put on the blog and will be communicated by different means for the people on what we get out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to Italian Climate Network's president, Ms. Veronica Caciagli, who will be making the very first brief conclusions before handing over to Rebecca for the conclusions from Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition. Please.
Thank you, Federico. I will be very, very brief. 1 minute, something more. Just I would like to begin by thanking our wonderful team made of young people, and Federico, Francesca, Marta, Chiara, Mattia, Francesca, Carolina, Federico. And the reason why we fight for young people is just because we have very talented young people in our team, and we really appreciate it. I would like also to thank Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition. And I have to tell you that I'm personally connected to your country because back in 2011, I was invited by your government along with 200 other young people. I was still considered to be young 5 years ago. And it was to celebrate your country. So for the first time in my life, I could feel the sense of unity as people of the world simply, and also the feeling of empowerment for the young people. And I think that this is reflected into our association too. And speaking about empowerment to us, as some of you has mentioned before, but I would like just to stress this, is not just to give information and trading, which is the base for it, but it's not just this. It's also to give space for the people, for young people, to decide for their own future. And I think that it makes the difference. And even to disagree, young people can also disagree, of course, when it's required. And this is why we ask our government to follow the example of other delegations at COP and to introduce at least one young delegate into the official delegation. And we are hopefully, we hope that for the next year we can announce this. So, you know, in conclusion, I think that we are going to experience some troubled years, I think, for the next, for the coming years about climate change, about the fight against climate change. But actually, after events like this and looking into your eyes, I really think that we can make it. Because you, young people, are in charge for your future. So just please do keep up the fight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zhen Shiru, and people call me Rebecca as well. I represent Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition. And unlike Ms. Veronica, who's a very respectable president to Italian Climate Network, I'm the youngest member in my organization. I'm 18 years old, and this is my first COP. As we're running out of time, I would like to share some words that I heard just this morning. This morning on his farewell event, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said the following words: "I often regard you, the civil society, as the kings and queens without crowns." As a Secretary General, I have some times of very sensitive political communications. I wanted to say to raise my voice as high as possible, but sometimes I have to be careful. You don't have this kind of situation. Some civil society leaders have risked their lives for the whole lives. Therefore, I ask you to raise your voice as high as possible. So, we thank you to coming to this event, and we do hope you to see you again at COP23, and we do expect you to share more with us. Thank you.
Thank you for participating, and see you next year then.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello. Hi. Hi. It's okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm